Attention, people of Earth, I have an important announcement to make.
Oh, no.
Good morning.
Okay.
Tape deck alert. Tape deck alert.
Thank you.
Brilliant!
Same old thing every single day. Never gets old, or does it? Well, what we forgot that time was this.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Yeah, and the title card, as you can see, it's like a horror movie. And the subtitle of this show is The Demiurge is/are running this planet. 11 January. It's looking more and more like the Gnostics were right. That's a pretty scary statement. But you know what? You know, it's a fair statement to make in 2022. And that's the crazy part about it. That's what's really crazy. But before we get into any of that nonsense, I'll leave the card here for now because I just realized. Let's take a look.
The Weather Watch forecast.
And here we go. Here's the former United States. As you can see, that southerly flow that was heading up to the northeast that brought all the horror to me is somehow being forced. It's almost being like forced. I guess there's a high pressure, as a meteorologist would say, over top of the central, to eastern United States. It's as if something is saying, you can't bring any jet stream or clouds to this area. So it's basically clear and cold. In the mid-Atlantic states right here, right now, it's 10 degrees outside. I was out. We had a little bit of snow, and it was windy, too. So there's a wind chill. I think like I predicted, it's like about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So you figure that out in Celsius, you're below zero, way below 0 Celsius, too. So and the high today is be lucky if we hit 20. The overnight tonight, 18. The good part about it is it's going to, so far, forecast-wise, it's looking like it's not going to rain between now and the weekend, and that gives me some relief. I'm going to take a walk down to the grocery store with my winter hiking boots on or mountain climbing boots on and hope I don't slip and kill myself. But I guess unless you're in the Pacific Northwest where there's some crazy activity going on, or down in Mexico way and parts of Florida, there looks like there could be some lake effect snow coming off of the Great Lakes, of course. But other than that, even in New England, seems to be, fairly clear. There's a little action up in the Great Plains. You can tell by, as I always say, by these lights, those yellow, amber, whatever color lights you see are basically just a concentration of lights in the major cities. So just take a look at your location and you'll pretty much see your forecast for the day, at least as far as precipitation. And this time of year, I would say the entire upper half of the U.S. is going to be pretty cold. So that's the
Weather Watch forecast.
Blammo. I'm back. It's like a horror movie, right? It's like a horror movie. What's going on? Day by day, like that song, from Godspell. It's like a horror movie, man. That coffee is hot. I'm drinking black coffee. Still trying to get the upper hand on this gallbladder activity that I had been having, which is somewhat minor. You know, as long as there's underneath my eyes, it's not jaundice. Only I can laugh about this stuff. You know what I mean? What do you guys think?
Really funny. Really funny.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, what are you laughing at? So, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
Well, I could tell you're outdoors, and I think I'm going to be outdoors in probably less than 2 hours. I'm going to take a walk and try to buy some healthy stuff, some stuff I have on my list. Oh, can't see it. You don't have to. But, you know, some of these things that they're telling the consensus. What I'm going with, since I don't have a doctor's appointment until next Monday, I've got to somehow stay alive and out of the hospital. Applying online is fast and easy. Perfect credit not required. Okay? And they're sending me, you are pre-qualified for this Mission Lane Visa credit card. No annual fee, no monthly maintenance, no startup fee, no over-limit fee. I mean, they're really desperate. You know, what is the small print? They must be charging 50% interest. Transparent pricing. Scan with your phone. Mission Lane card. Sounds mighty enticing. This is what you got to do with these things. They're all scams in one way or another. Like I say, and not just me, interest rates, the Fed has announced 3 probable interest rate raises this year and another 3 next year, which means if you're planning to move, get a mortgage or finance something, get a loan or do something, you better get it now. And if you get a credit card or some kind of loan or mortgage, whatever it might be, car loan, make sure it's fixed. Okay? Fixed rate. Because 6 interest rates hikes over the next 2 years, which would be the term, at least, you know, probably partial term of your loan, you know, who knows how high interest rates will go. So the word to the wise is sufficient, some teacher used to say when I was a kid. That coffee's not bad. It's just like, I don't know, cop shop coffee, right? Stuff the detectives drink, you know. So anyway, what am I talking about? Do you know what the Demiurge is? Okay. This is the Demiurge. I'm on the wrong. This could have went really a lot smoother. Demiurge, Greek, public worker, plural. But in philosophy, a subordinate god, lower G, who fashions and arranges the physical world to make it conform to rational and eternal ideal. All right, ethics, Western philosophy, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, key people. Anyway, if you look in this area right here, Demiurge, in the Platonic, you know, Middle Platonic and Neoplatonic schools of philosophy, the Demiurge is an artisan-like figure responsible for fashioning and maintaining the physical universe. The Gnostics adopted the term Demiurge. All right. Who created the Demiurge? You know, Plotinus. This is like a really weird rabbit hole if you want to go to. I refuse to click on those Wikipedia links because for the reasons that I told you yesterday, they're just, you know, it's fake. It's fake news. You know, it's probably on the World of the New World Encyclopedia, but at least this is something different. creator, deity, or divine artisan responsible for the creation of the physical universe. The word was first introduced in this sense by Plato in his Timaeus 41 A, which was 360 BC. Subsequently appears in a number of different religious and philosophical systems of late antiquity, notably Neoplatonism and Gnosticism. Alternative Gnostic names of Demiurge are, etc., etc. You might want to go down that rabbit hole just for the heck of it, okay? Because it's a whole different line of thinking and a whole different line of thought, particularly the Gnostics, all right? It's a philosophy. A lot of YouTubers are familiar with that because it's kind of part of the YouTube, culture, somewhere along the line. If you've been on YouTube for a number of years, you've come across that kind of thing. Well, that coffee's staying nice and hot on my little hot $9 hot warmer, which I bought, months and months ago. But, when I say it's like a horror movie, and who knows what the Demiurge is, the Demiurge may look like that, bug-eyed thing, right? Trapping us on this planet, molding this world we live in. Some people might say that Mark Zuckerberg is the Demiurge, right? Is this concept of this circular time. And I think it might have been in, I don't know if it was a book, Childhood's End by, was it Asimov? Let's see here. I'm going to do a quick search. Sci-fi, Childhood's End. Oh, Arthur C. Clarke. Let's just take a look at that. This is something else. I'm just giving you a little quick education in some of this stuff. Childhood End. Actually, they made a mini-series of it in 2015, which I guess I probably would have seen that. If I didn't, I need to look for it. Maybe it wasn't about... Yeah, that's right. That's this, yeah. Because when the so-called God or alien showed themselves, it was... this is definitely a spoiler alert if you're not familiar with that. Maybe I shouldn't. Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End. Well, anyway, I believe in there, it was either Childhood's End or one of his books. When I don't know why I'm thinking Childhood's End was the book, but it was either Clarke or Asimov, one or the other. And I used to read a lot of sci-fi. I used to read Bradbury, Heinlein and all those guys, Philip K. Dick. But it was either Bradbury or Clarke or, the other guy, Clarke or Asimov. It's 5:21 a.m. in the morning. Let me remind you of that on the 11th of January. 2022. But it was one or the other of them that somewhere in their book, and this would not be a spoiler alert, but it was towards the end of the book where someone was dealing with, they were talking about time, and there was this, it was almost on just one page, because I think I dog-eared it like in high school when I was reading the thing, that they were referring to, and I once did a presentation on here where I kind of drew from that, but I took it in a different, I just let this free flow of consciousness happen and see where I would go with it, where I was given an explanation of time, like non-linear time. And the idea is that the things that we feared the most, and now that I think about it, I think it was Asimov. And it might well have been Childhood's End. But that certain things that we fear the most and we don't understand why we fear them, or these things that we have from the past, like the image of the devil, right? Because, if you look back in religious texts and stuff, they don't really mention. It's very interesting how the concept of the devil or, came to be, right? As this horned, the image of that devil, right? And one of the concepts was that if you think of time in a non-linear fashion, in other words, it's not history, you can't travel back in time and forward time in a linear sense, but if time were more circular, it would make a little more sense. And I don't know if I still have those images I drew. I think I put them in my notebook. But if I have them here, I'll pull them out again. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I actually do have one. Unfortunately, it's not scanned in. So let's get rid of our title card for a second. All right, so the idea was if most people see linear time being the past leading to the future, okay? But what if, you take time, let's put it on an XY axis, okay, which is crazy. You see, because my idea was I was trying to say I don't believe in Einstein's space-time. I decouple those, right? Just like I don't believe in necessarily in black holes the way they were described by Einstein, and I don't dark matter and dark energy. I think they just filled in gaps, holes in their formulae, right? In other words, these things were created to fit their calculations, but not necessarily, they're theoretical by nature. Remember, the theory of relativity, it's a theory, okay? Just like, the other theories we have, the Big Bang theory, right? And the evolution theory is a theory. We have a lot of theories that people just take and say, well, that's it. And it may be that, what they call the scientific consensus, which I hate that word because, there are so many scientists and so many thoughts, and particularly in today's age when, like a person like me, who's read my books, right? How many people like me I have 10 books out there that discuss all kinds of topics and might even get into things of this nature, right? Well, so you can't say there's a consensus. It's a consensus among those who have tenure at accredited universities, et cetera, or the fortunate ones. It's just like the power elite type of thing, right? Those I made a misquote when I was talking about the gold. The golden rule. I said the golden rule is those with the most gold win. But no, it's the golden rule is those with the most gold rule, which is true, But anyway, back to this. If I could keep my hand in this position, I'm holding this up. Imagine circular time. All right, so time is a circle, more like why we developed the analog clock, apart from the concept of the sundial, right? But then again, everything seems to be that way, right? Things revolve around each other, right? And there are grand cycles, right? The cycle of the Earth going around the sun is a year. The idea of the sun traveling, through on its galactic path, right, is what we call precession, right? And we have precession of the equinoxes, that gives us the seasons, correct? Axial tilt and things like that. But and we're in the midst of this 12,000 year cycle that could spell a near extinction event for the Earth, but that's not what today's show is necessarily about. So in linear time, obviously, it would virtually be impossible to go back in time, though it does seem possible that you could perhaps leapfrog to the future, but you would be stuck there. But the idea of circular time, future time, and time thought of in this matter means that time is almost like a repetitive cycle. Now, that's not so much to say that every minute detail would necessarily be repeated. In other words, if it was a 26,000 year cycle, for example, of time, if you get into some like Mayan calendar or something like that, and there's all these different, I don't want to get into the, specifics on here and have someone criticize me and say, well, it's 24,000 years or it's 26,000 years or something weird like that. Or these grand cycles, okay? There's cycles within cycles. It's the same with, the 400-year cycle of like Maunder minimum. People talk about that. Solar cycles, which are short cycles, right? These kinds of things. We have cycles. Seasons are cycles, right? Everything's a cycle. Women menstruate on a cycle. Not to bring that up. I had somebody who was watching. It looks like that scared them away. But maybe it didn't scare them away. Maybe YouTube just took them away, took their count away. But we know that everything is cyclical. Okay, so when someone looks at this thing and says it's like a horror movie, maybe they were hoping I was getting into the horror movie. I don't know. Welcome back. The idea is this. In a circular time continuum, that it would be possible to go forward or backward in time, conceivably, all right? And in this concept of this Gnostic concept and this demiurge, this idea of this created reality, which is not far-fetched from things like those who talk about the simulation theory or those who talk about even the metaverse that Zuckerberg is talking about, if you think about it, right? He's kind of the demiurge. In the Platonic sense, because he's creating, he's fashioning, he's molding a universe, but he's calling it a metaverse. So what if time, the idea, get back to what I was talking about with like Asimov or whatever in this book, Childhood's End, okay? Clark, it was Clark, no, it was Asimov. She's a flat, no, she's a round, I don't know. Anyway, whatever, listen. The idea was that the images that were very strong, like almost built into our mythology, into our minds, that we can't really explain why something terrifies us or why we find something beautiful, right? Why is it? And I would say this would be true for most people, and this is going to go all over the place, but why is it when you would be on this beautiful beach, right? And hear the sound of the surf. What is so mesmerizing about that? And why do you find that so beautiful? Why do people find certain things beautiful, right? Why do I find, a woman beautiful, right? Think about it. You have to in other words, deconstruct your mind, all right? This is the whole idea. See, you have to understand that how much conditioning and everything has gone on, but start deconstructing things down to a level of saying of its true basics. So why do people have this image of the devil, say, and why or monsters, and why are they so horrific? Right? Deconstruct it, and you have to go beyond the point of. In one regard, because I'm the first to admit there are certain mythological or certain things that are obvious. In early days, just as little as 10 to 12,000 years ago, right here in North America, they're now extinct. When the woolly mammoths went extinct, which we can get into, they still found undigested food in their stomachs, so they were flash frozen extinct. But there were giant bears and saber-toothed tigers that at the same time had gone extinct. Now, could you imagine, just the concept of some kind of tiger itself is like a monster. But imagine a giant saber-toothed tiger with these big protruding things. Or imagine, it's bad enough if you were taking a walk in the woods or some national park, and you were confronted by a bear, and the bear stands up, right? And here's this 12-foot, thing with these claws, right? Well, that's truly genuine. And teeth. That's truly, genuinely a monster. Well, you know, there were bears, like giant bears at the same time. And there were other animals at the same, and this is just as little as 10, 12,000 years ago, right here in North America. And they were like flash frozen. And that's this 12,000 year cycle that we're talking about. The Younger Dryas period. You know, this isn't like fantasy, myth. This isn't like some people believe this, that, the other. The only thing that's up for question is what was the cause of it. Some people believe that, you know, a comet, asteroid came, broke up, hit part of Greenland, hit part of the western part of the United States, you know, and, you know, there's different theories. Other people, which I, you know, subscribe to the theory, is that the sun has this, what's called a micronova, and it expels its outer shell. And we've talked about that many times on this program. And if you want to see a whole series of videos on that, go see Ben Davidson's suspiciousobservers.org site or Doug Vogt's Diehold Foundation site on YouTube. You know, there's a plethora of videos that are very, you know, get into very much detail on that. So the idea is, yeah, those were actual monsters that existed. And some call it racial memory, and not as in race, as in the color or that kind of thing. Racial meaning human race. You know, the species. Okay, Homo sapiens, which is the technical term that an anthropologist would call the human race. And so that these things are almost embedded in our DNA to be afraid of monsters, right? Because they were monsters. So if you've got a 12-foot, I remember growing up in the town next door, someone in the window had shot a bear, you know, some hunter or something, and they had it, you know, stuffed or whatever, and it was in the window, and it was this giant, you know, stuffed bear in this window that was like 10, 12 feet, you know, standing. They had it standing. Well, imagine something that was like maybe 20 feet tall or 18, you know what I mean? We're talking literally a monster, right? Now that's, so, you know, and so imagine, so that's the past. And then there were dinosaurs, of course, in the, you know, in almost in deep, what we would refer to, not so much deep time, but close to deep time, you know, 60 million years ago, 100-some millions years ago. But we don't know anything about all of that because it's just, you know, it's what we read, right? You know, it's what we see in fossils, it's what we, you know, archaeological digs, you know, we uncover certain things and then we try to date these things in certain ways. But, you know, there's a lot of still some kind of guesswork in there. It's like there's still theory involved in many things, but I don't want to get into that. So imagine time, non-linear time and more of a circular time. And so that in effect, the demiurge, and I don't mean to get like, you know, I mean, okay, let's just get the laughter out of the way.
Really funny.
Okay, we got the laughter out of the way. But imagine that the demiurge is Mark Zuckerberg, okay, is the metaverse, all right? And so we're remembering the future. You follow me? We're remembering the future. The future is the past, and the past is the future. And that's the concept of what I propose, circular time, and decoupling something called space-time, so that time exists, you know, or doesn't even exist in the manner in which it's been described by you know, modern physicists. And it's not to say that every physicist agrees. That's why I was talking about this whole idea of consensus. You know, there isn't really consensus. There's just mainstream thought and mainstream theory, you see. And it's like anything else that goes on, all right? It's like what goes on media and, you know, social media. It's mainstream. Like I said, those with the gold rule. That's the golden rule. But I mean, so history is written by the victors. You know, all of these sayings that you have heard, you know, they all make sense because they're all true, right? So you can, in reality, the only thing you really can believe is something that you've experienced firsthand, or that you genuinely have heard from someone that you absolutely, positively, without a doubt, trust, you know, wholeheartedly. Okay. And that's, you know, that's just the way it is. So in other words, so when you deconstruct the human psyche, the mind, the memory, right? And you take it down and ask these core questions of why do we feel this way? Why are we afraid of this thing? Why do we, you know, find this thing to be beautiful? Why is this scary? Okay. And then we try to, and then you start. It's like you start from scratch. It's like yesterday, in a whole different vein, I was saying the internet was broken, that the only way to fix it would be to basically rebuild it from scratch, because it's inherently so, it becomes so vast, so all-encompassing, right? And when you have 26 billion videos on YouTube, for example, alone, that it's impossible to create some kind of AI or algorithmic, you know, pseudo nanobot type things, right? Though there would no nanobot wouldn't be the thing, would be more something we would use in the physical world as opposed to the virtual world. But something conceptually like that to somehow feed through 26 billion videos, and find out these people that are telling you if you have a gallbladder or gallstones, you know, drink Epsom salts or something that could kill you or something. You see what I'm saying? So it would be impossible, and even in a planet of 8 billion people, you know, those numbers, the numbers of like 26 billion are just incomprehensible. Excuse me. So let's get back to reality, let's get back to Earth, you know.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Excuse me while I have my morning caffeine coffee. So, for someone not familiar with the show, those are truckers going up my neighborhood, and they shouldn't even be on this street. That's camera 2 facing out my front window. It snowed a little bit last night, very windy. I was out there earlier. I just had to use a broom to sweep it off my porch and put some rock salt down, by the way. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, if you look at 2022, and everywhere I look, and I've been scanning a lot lately because it's wintertime and I'm kind of stuck in the house. You know, it's been between all-day rainstorms. Last week we had some serious snow and stuff. It's like I've kind of been trapped inside. You can't go outside. Today I'm going to get out. I'm going out hiking at around 7 today, putting on the hiking boots and stuff. But so I've had a lot of time to really, you know, scan YouTube. And like I say, and not in a sense of an entertainment way, you know, because I have nothing. The whole reason I've actually first became aware of things like the Demiurge and the Gnostics and stuff like that was because I was, you know, going down rabbit holes, which if you're a YouTuber, whether you're someone like me who actually does, you know, puts on some kind of vlog, or you're still a YouTuber if you just basically YouTube is your go-to source, you know, for you spend a lot of time on it, as opposed to like for example, I don't have any cable TV, satellite or anything like that. YouTube's my TV. And you know, that's how I originally, going down the rabbit hole, really happened upon this, and I found some very interesting people with some very compelling arguments and, you know, research that they had done that got into this whole concept. Like, I really never really knew about what the Gnostics were. You know, it was like a word I heard and was somewhat really very slightly familiar with. But nothing like a 2-hour show that I've watched on YouTube where some guy had delved deep into this thing and apparently spent weeks, reading through the writings of all these writers from 2,000 some plus years ago, or 1,000 years ago even. So what I'm saying is that if you look at today, you look at YouTube today as an example, all right? Or you look, even if you're a news junkie type of person, which to me, I find that word abhorrent, and I find the concept being abhorrent. It's like you can't help, saying, hey, Trey. You can't help but thinking that like life is 2022 is like a horror movie. Well, some people say, well, last year was like a horror movie and 2020 was a real horror movie, But it's getting worse. All right. There's a truck outside. You can see that's my garbage truck. Today's garbage day, pickup day. I have a bag out there. And fortunately, I was worried last night. The winds were so intense, I was expecting my bag to have blown out into the street or something. But when I was out there putting rock salt down, I noticed it's still there by the pole. Anyway, that's my little thing. But no, across the board, no matter who you talk to, people that had been, kind of like these centrist type people, those who are afraid to they try to play the middle, play both sides, right? Even those people that I've been watching, like I say, because I've had time, you're locked in the house basically because it's either raining or snowing outside. It's miserable. Today it's 10 degrees. I can't believe. If I don't cover myself properly, the tip of my nose technically could get frostbite with the wind chill factor, below 0 Fahrenheit, right? It's probably warm. Not probably. I bet you it's warmer on the Antarctic Peninsula right now. So I had time and I looked. And so I looked at things that I normally might not look at. I might have spent a little more time. Like sometimes I'll click on a particular video and I'll just to get the gist of what they're saying. And I might not watch the whole thing. I recommend people even do that with me, because sometimes the beginnings of my show are a little bit slow, a little bit just Tony Caravan Live, goofy stuff. But by the time you get into the second hour, sometimes in a free flow of consciousness, the thoughts and ideas, they all seem to come together, and then we get into some it really makes sense. And I can't say how many countless shows out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them that I've done that, almost in the last 20 minutes, it's been like this beautiful, pulling together of an idea, and it comes out and it's presented in a succinct form that's like kind of a mind blower. Like I wish I had an assistant, right? But I do this all myself. I wish I had somebody like, like Rogan has somebody that puts out these, they call them JRE clips, like Tim Pool, they have little clips of their shows. But I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the time to download the file, then take it into a program and then go through it, edit the clip, and then upload the clip and do this and do that. It's like I'm not monetized, so I would be spending my entire day, doing a thing that has, that consumed my entire day for what, right? And it's not that even money would be the factor. It's the fact that it's not like I have, 100, you don't see one of those silver YouTube plaques on the back of my wall, right? No, I don't have 100,000 followers. I have like a couple of dozen, subscribers. I've had videos that have gotten thousands of views over the years. I've been on YouTube for 14 years, and in the early days, I used to get a lot more, but, those videos were more of my expedition videos and things of that nature. it's as if these long form videos just don't appeal to people. And I think it's because I don't do the clip. Sorry, my chair's falling down as it does every day, like multiple times. Anyway, so let's get into this thing. We'll get comfortable. So out of all of these videos, and even just scanning the internet in general, which thought the internet's broken, but in the course of my research, for other reasons, even health reasons, I find that there's this general sense of malaise, this feeling as if there's not a lot of positive thinking, right? That you don't, the future doesn't seem to be bright among the masses, put it that way, the average person. And the average person, by the average person, I mean is almost a non-billionaire even. Because there's people making high tens of thousands, six figures, and maybe perhaps even people making, low seven figures, who still don't seem to have very positive outlook towards the future. And the volatility of the markets and stuff reflect that. So you can see some concrete examples of it, but you also see just in the way they're talking and the type of things that are coming out of the mouths of people that normally would be more, like I say, playing both sides, are now starting to look, it's not so much political, it's just the idea of like, hey, things are weird, right? Things are screwed up, man. It's like we're in a horror movie and we're just waiting for something to happen. It's like that, that time right after 9/11, and something when people used to say, waiting for the next shoe to drop, right? And if people who were cognizant of that at that time, right, that was the thing. People were saying, okay, what's going to happen next, right? And there was a lot of that going on, particularly people in major markets. If you were outside of that world, you weren't so much affected, unless you're like people are today, mesmerized by the TV, the news junkie, So it's like a horror movie we're living through. And the question is, and then this concept of the demiurge and this idea of escaping. So it's a horror movie, but rather than waiting for the movie to end or saying, well, okay, well, this movie's going to end soon, hey, you go to a horror movie with some people, you go, I'm not into this, man. I'm going out to the lobby. I'm going to get some popcorn. I'll meet you guys after the movie out front, right? I'm going to go smoke a cigarette or something. Instead of just saying, okay, the horror movies, it's a limited movie, right? It's going to be over. Instead, people are saying, I'm going to escape into this metaverse, right? It's being created by this demiurge, right? And so all I'm posing just, just out of thin air, I'm just creating this concept. And I'm just drawing on some of the classic science fiction of the past. But I'm saying, what if a guy like Mark Zuckerberg and these guys, that is the demiurge. And in other words, what we're remembering is the future. You see? You think of that again. Let me say that again. What we're remembering is the future. Our fear of uncertainty is the future. But not because of some imagination of it, because it already happened before. And we have this almost genetic fear, like I say, the term racial memory, as in human memory, human beings, homo sapiens, right? It's pretty freaky. It's a pretty freaky idea, every time I say the word homo sapiens, somebody leaves. It's like, I guess they don't teach anthropology in schools anymore, and people don't understand that term, right? Weird. That's weird. I don't know. But for most people, it's pretty clear that
it's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
I mean, that goes without a doubt. And, and for me at times,
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
and let's go to our old classic.
This is insane.
So, how do you go forward in this situation, when with this uneasiness, right? This feeling of, that there's this, the sword of Damocles is dangling over your head, right? To use another ancient term, right? The concept of the old albatross, right? Because that's what 2022 is. And like I say, erase politics from this. Erase politics from this. And let's even erase the concept of the monster concept. That's was just a title card. Thumbnail, just to draw you to that idea of what I was trying to say here is what if the demiurge are running this planet, right? And in effect, they are. If you look at the World Economic Forum, for example, and that guy Klaus, he could well be what would be described as a demiurge. They're trying to mold, the Davos set. They're trying to mold this world, okay, our universe, because this is really our universe. We're not a spacefaring people, into their own fashion. So they're like gods, the small g gods, right? And people are like following these gods, right? These modern day gods. There's like that series on Stars, American Gods. I watched that a little bit. They didn't really get into it so much this way, but they got into a little bit of weirdness like that because they had the techno gods and stuff like that. But they also had the ancient gods mixed in with it. It was a fascinating series. I don't know if it's going to come back. If it comes back, I'll probably rent Stars for a month and binge watch it and then cancel it. That's what I usually do with those things. But yeah, isn't that what's going on? And isn't that possibly something that could well have gone on in the past? And if time is circular, and if there isn't a thing called space-time, if it's just space and it's just time, and if you look at, modern physics, right? Let's get out of the Einstein concepts, all right? And let's talk about, looking at things like particle physics. Let's look at things like multiple dimensions, all right? And, various, and the whole concept of vibrations, which, this is how, string theory, right? That sort of thing, that it opens up a whole different, like I say, you have to deconstruct everything you've been taught, right? Deconstruct the world that you were brought up in, and then start, and be open enough to start from scratch and just say, what if, right? What if? And whether or not it's just a mental exercise or something like that, that doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? A thought experiment, some people call this kind of stuff. But still, it's worthwhile, because the idea of just taking everything you know as dogma, it's like my shirt and the slogan on above my head, everything you know is wrong. And one of the most popular phrases that I push out there to people is, you don't know what you don't know. And like I've mentioned this before, I've worn that in public to like doctor's appointments and different places like that. I have that particular shirt. I have all my shirts. I'm the only one. But that one gets the most comments, by like serious people, professional people, like surgeons and people of that ilk. They're like, yeah, presidents of companies, CEO types, because that's the whole thing. You don't know what you don't know. And so many people feel they like know stuff, right? Because they watch TV or they read a paper or they read a headline or they look at something that comes on the news on their smartphone and they think they're in the know. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. You're believing some headline. You're believing somebody who said there's a consensus on something. You're believing a theory to be fact. The thing is, the theory may be true, but we don't know that. You don't know that. And in some cases, everything you know may be wrong, right? And in a lot of cases, everything you do know is wrong with some people, and it's game over. So what I'm getting at is that it's just this weird feeling that seems to be going around now, and it's not healthy for the planet and for people. Because if you consider things in a vibratory standpoint, and I know this sounds metaphysical to some people, and perhaps it is. I'm pouring coffee. Perhaps it is metaphysical. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So Trey, chatting on my thing, said that he couldn't put a chat on there. I'm pretty much up on like Project Veritas and a lot of that stuff. It's interesting. This runs along the same line though. What's going on right now? I don't know if Pete, you've caught the news in general about like what's going on with the CDC, and like the director of the CDC has been in a number of interviews basically seriously contradicting and saying some outrageous things. I mean, that go against the main narrative. Now, I'm sure that the so-called powers that be are going to somehow, it's like when, the president says something and then they quick rush to say, well, what he really meant was, right? And the thing is, I don't know, or some kind of statistic appears on a website, right, a government-related website, and then they'll change it. Well, what we really meant to say, or that was, or sometimes there'll be this absolute ridiculous lie, in like the New York Times or Washington Post or one of these so-called mainstream news organizations, hardly news organizations, right? I mean, basically, let's face it, all media, which includes social media and traditional media, it's all hypocrisy for profit, right? Just like the politicians, right? It's hypocrisy for profit. Just like all the unelected bureaucrats, hypocrisy for profit. Just like the corporatocracy, big tech, big pharma, big ag, right? Military contractors, big media. It's hypocrisy for profit, right? You know that. I know that. People know that, or they should know it. And if they don't know it, it's too bad. In fact, those are the type of people who don't feel what this vibe that I'm trying to get across. You see, because they're just following the leader. They're just lemmings, right? There's a Pied Piper, and they're just following the Pied Piper to the, to this off the cliff, right? That's what's going on, and there's nothing you can do about that. And some people, that's why politics is useless, and I keep trying to drive that issue to people. It's useless. right? Because you're not going to, you donate to a campaign, you're not going to change people's mind with a political ad or a billboard or like these mailing, sending out a bunch of direct mail pieces. They're just going to tear them up. I mean, I get junk mail every day, There's some that the Chinese have even taken over one of the hospitals in the area. There's nothing against the Chinese, but I mean, it's the idea that America's being bought by communist China, even in our healthcare system. Did you hear that story that came out, this week that there was at GlaxoSmithKline in the southeast, outside of the Philadelphia area, southeast Pennsylvania, one of the research areas that back in 2015, they found a Chinese person working on research there stole information on monoclonal antibodies. All right. And has since been was caught. It's been caught, and said this will help. And the line was in the correspondence in sending the research for these monoclonal antibodies. This will help you very much in your work. That's like a really, really like woo-woo but scary thing that really kind of puts. Then you remember when the guy with the F, who's the face of this thing, came out not so much long after that. Well, was sending over stuff from the U.S. to the Wuhan lab for gain-of-function research because that was work they couldn't do here. And who had said not so long after this whole affair that with confidence had said that we would be, in the near future, we would be facing a pandemic. And then he became the face and the go-to guy. Of course, there was that event 201 that was right around that period too. Well, was a little bit later, but not much longer after he said with certainty that this thing would happen. And now we're into it. And like I say, someone could look at this and say, oh, well, they're all just coincidences. But let's look at coincidence. A GlaxoSmithKline researching monoclonal antibodies, which is basically one of the things that they give, to people who get this thing, the elite. They don't give it to us, okay? That research is given to the communist Chinese, right? Guy's caught. And in his memo is that this should help you very much in your work. That's one. Two, Fauci and company send this, our U.S. Bio research to a Wuhan lab for perform gain-of-function work that's illegal in the U.S. 3, Fauci comes out and says that there's going to be, almost with confidence, a pandemic within the next couple of years. 4, there's this event 201, right, that basically is exactly what happens, right? 5, it frickin' happens. 6, the pharmaceutical companies are making hundreds of billions of dollars, right, on this thing. And 7, the various treatments, including the monoclonal things that were stolen and reported by the mainstream media now, are not being made available to the average person. And they're, as the so-called kitchen sink, the Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Psaki, the press secretary, Trump, various members of Congress, people who have gotten this thing, that's what they've gotten. That's the treatment they got. So that there is a treatment for this. All right. Now you say, well, that's all a coincidence. That's not all cool. Come on. This is like you could actually follow you could actually create this timeline, and I'm probably leaving out several things, you know. And then they banned discussion of the details of all this various stuff. So it's starting to come out. People in the mainstream media know this stuff. And I think they'll eventually get, that's why some of this is starting to leak out. Because I think they're having a hard time. Excuse me, I got coffee in my mustache. I think they have a hard time going home to their families or looking at their children and realize and knowing that they're lying to the American people and that the lies that they're telling can affect their own family. You see? And that this country is completely fallen apart because of it. You know, and so that's the thing. And some people have predicted this would happen, and it is human nature. You know, not every single person working for every news organization is evil, right? Not everybody at the Washington Post and the New York Times is evil. I went to, you know, I was the production supervisor of the Columbia Daily Spectator. It's a news. It used to be in the Upper West Side in New York City, Columbia University. I used to oversee the production of the law school journal for Columbia University too, and if you remember that show Fame, the high school for New York, we used to put that out too, right? The paper for that, the high school for the performing arts. I was in charge of all those things, right? I was the guy who oversaw all that. And let me tell you, particularly with the Columbia journalist students that are all over the place now. You know, they're at the Post, they're at the Times, they're in advertising agencies, they're all over. These were the cream of the crop, so to speak. I mean, really, you can't imagine, from the photographers to the writers to the cartoonists to the, researchers. I mean, they were, I've never been around, and I've worked for a lot of papers myself. I've never been around such a high level of dedication to to journalism, to any kind of craft, to any kind of creative effort, whatever you want to call it. And so, knowing and having mentored some of these people, but having been around them, I know that there are people within these organizations that are, of superior intellect. Do you know what I mean? That have empathy, that are rational human beings, that have common sense, to put it simply, and that can't live with, are not evil people, and could not live a lie indefinitely. It's always possible for someone to compromise, a little bit because, say, someone has a family and a lifestyle and a house payment and this, that, the other, and to know that if they were to go against their editor or someone like that and they were to be fired from that job, that they basically would be out on the streets, or their kids would be out of that school. And you see what I mean? They would lose their house, and they would be, in this time is no time for somebody looking for a high-paying job in journalism. Okay? So I understand it's a possibility that some people might have, kind of just like look the other way here or there. But we're reaching a point now, this has gone on so long, where I think, people are saying, no, we can't live. I can't live this. I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that, you can't unsee something you've seen, put it that way. Right? You know what I mean? You can't unsee something you've seen. It's like people who have nightmares about something. You can't hold, it's impossible to, hold a lie, live a lie your entire life. And this thing that's going around now, people are starting to come out with little bits and pieces of unraveling this scenario now. They're starting to unravel it. And if your eyes are wide open, right? And like I say, if you deconstruct, what the way you've been conditioned, that's the thing, In other words, if you're open to the idea of saying, hey, when I say you don't know what you don't know, and I mean that for myself, I don't know what I don't know. And quite possibly, not necessarily everything, but everything is wrong, or everything I know, could be wrong, unless I experience it. There's a caveat there, unless I experienced it firsthand. So everything is wrong unless you know better, right? You could add that line to it. But generally speaking, the lion's share of the information that we've been fed from, like I say, from cradle to grave at this point, is not true, right? Or it's theoretical, or it may be true, partially true, it's half truth. But when you connect the dots, when you look at some of these timelines, like the one I outlined before about, what happened with this GlaxoSmithKline and that story that came out in mainstream, that's a real eye-opener. I didn't even bother to talk about, simultaneously, when this first thing came out, how the WHO was saying this thing, they literally were on record as saying, came out, you could, I could still see the woman, press person saying, press agent, whatever she was, saying, this thing is not transmissible from human to human. The World Health Organization, like in the early days. And so, and then that's what it is. And so all along the way, there's been flip-flops. There's been people saying a thing, and then another thing has come up. And then there have been these people who have been sounding the alarm about the type of things that I've been saying, talking about the Event 201s and talking about, the guy whose name begins with an F and all that stuff. And, they've just been banned and pushed away. But now it's coming out, where it's like, it's no longer up for debate. In other words, the timeline and, the connect the dot coloring book actually has an image on it now. All right. And that image is the image of the Demiurge, to bring it back to how we began this whole thing. Pretty freaky. It's pretty freaky. So, I don't know. And, it's like some people have their responses.
Good thing that I don't have dangerous brain powers, or right now you'd be in 1,000 little pieces.
Of course, my response is
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Then their response is
Your papers, please.
because there's a lot of people, in government, or as I call it, the corporatocracy and the unelected bureaucrats, who are just doubling and tripling down. So, this is coming out, and then they'll go out and make some kind of stump speech and say something as if, and you're going, wait a second, we already know what you're saying isn't true, right? The jig's up, we know this is hypocrisy for profit, right? It's like there is no, forget it. We know. We've seen it. We've seen the treatment. We've seen AOC, partying without a mask on down in Miami, drinking drinks around people, shaking her, her gazungas. People get annoyed when I say that. So what? Anyway, I'm glad you tuned in.
The only station that matters.
So, yeah, it's pretty freaky. It's really freaky, but it's scary. And it's unhealthy. there's this thing they call, in my search with this gall bladder thing, gallstones, that kind of thing, there's certain things they tell you to avoid, or things that are causal factors. And one of them is this like cortisol. And that's like when you're, upset and things of that nature. Let's see if we get a result on that. Let's see. Sorry, probably look like an idiot right now. You'll see what I'm looking at in a second. Display. Should have came up this way. Does anxiety cause high cortisol? Cortisol, otherwise known as stress hormone, is made in the adrenal glands. It's elevated when we experience heightened anxiety or stress, and it's lowered when we are in a relatively relaxed state. Okay? Do you see that? And so what they're saying is that part of this cortisol is it has negative repercussions of your body, and particularly I found out it was one of the factors in these so I'm just looking at some of my chats. So anyway, so cortisol actually makes us unhealthy and can help make, could be a factor in creating gallstones and other things to your body. Stress kills. You've heard that term before. And so that's the kind of so we cannot continue. We've been in this state of constant stress in this country, right? For basically we're coming on like 2 years now, right? Because it was like January of 2020 when the word started, spreading about this thing, right? When it first started spreading. The average person didn't really know about it until, almost end of February into March, because you had people like Pelosi saying, come on down to Chinatown and party here, right? And you had that guy, the former mayor of New York, de Blasio, saying, come to New York, it's, whatever. And then you had Cuomo and de Blasio sending people into nursing homes who had this thing and spreading it. And Lord knows how many thousands of people died because of that. And then you had these daily meetings that were just contradictory. And like I was saying yesterday, or I said in the show before, from a health standpoint, they were saying, wash your hands, stay, keep social distance, and wear any kind of face covering that wasn't doing much because stuff could still get in your eyes or through the sides and stuff like that. But they were never telling you about diet, right? And how to boost your immune system. They didn't let us know about things like, treatments, and all that sort of thing. Instead, all the media and the government were fear-mongering on a daily basis, giving us heightened cortisol levels in our body for 2 years, which were basically causing all sorts of stress, and stress kills, right? And, the elderly, because they watch TV. That's a TV generation. Remember that. Okay. So the people most susceptible to this thing were the type of people who traditionally would watch ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, those kinds of stations, right? Because that's what they were brought their whole life. That was what it was. When I was a kid, my parents, everyone had their network. That's why there are still so. Because I always look at it and say, why are there so many networks? Why is there ABC, NBC, CBS? Why don't they just there should be like one network, and then there could be some, multiple cable networks. But I mean, why? Because they're brands. And, in the coming years, they will fade away. But right now, it's like you can go to, a grocery store And you'll look for toothpaste and you'll see Colgate and you'll see, Gleam or something. And you'll go, Gleam? What are you talking about? Well, it was a toothpaste they had in the 60s or the 70s. So it's a brand that there's still people alive and that's called brand loyalty. Remember, I was a, creative director of an ad agency. So you have, brand loyalty. And that's the whole idea of why they go after young people with things. Like I said, when I was a kid, I was like 18. When the drinking age was 18, I was down in Wildwood, New Jersey, and I had a job working for one of the tobacco companies, and I was handing out, I'd get a box filled with cartons of cigarettes, and I would go to various bars, and they'd pay me $20 or $40 to just hand out free packs of cigarettes to people. They were trying to promote that brand and get people to smoke. It was a sick thing. What did I know? I was 18 years old. It was, they were giving me like 20 or $40. I'd go in a bar and have a great time, as soon as I got rid of all my cigarettes. But cortisol, right? So it's like a horror movie, man. They've got people scared to death. And it's like this ancient, and then you have these people like Zuckerberg in this metaverse, and they're coming out, and it's like the Demiurge, right? Or like I say, Klaus at the World Economic Forum, the Demiurge. Like these people trying to mold this world. And it's just like people here in the U.S. and this ruling class. And then there's these unrealistic things that come out. Like this idea, this hope, like, the Elon Musk idea of we're going to build a city on Mars. And there's probably people thinking, I'm going to go there. But if you've ever really listened to an interview with Elon Musk, okay, not some clip, like a long form interview. And I've said this once or twice before. I have. And he said basically that we'll be lucky to get the first ship to Mars within 5 years, possibly 10 years would be the first ship. And he openly admitted, and the guy's got to be in his 40s or something like that. He's not a spring chicken. So he basically said, I'll never see it in my lifetime. He won't see the city in his lifetime. And so, forget about that, right? And then there's this people have this idea, Bitcoin's going to go and I'm going to make digital currency. All you need is one of these things, which we're well overdue for. When all the signs are that, some solar activity, we're going to have some problems in the coming years. I mean, in the short term. And that's the end of any kind of digital currency. It's the end of this whole thing. That's why I basically, have this. This is my backyard. If the fit hits the shan, okay, I've got food. I've got a place, to hang out. I don't care if the power grid goes down. I don't use it that much. I use it for this, And by the way, let's make my song Virtual Cage #1. Listen to it on Spotify every day, or Apple Music if you have it, or Amazon Music. Request it on your Echo Dot, right? Let's make this thing move up the charts. It's a good tune. Some of my other good tunes are like Game Over, and some other ones. But that's enough of that. My book, Then What, and Codex are also very good reading. Great solar stuff will help you get through the power failure. You need to have backup power. Even if it's just a storm, knocks down a power line with a tree hits a power line or something. But so, yeah, people can't live on a sustained level of cortisol that's happening right now. It's basically it's eating away at our bodies. It's eating away at our organs. It's causing all kinds of problems. I'm a victim of it myself. There's too much stress in our lives, and stress kills. And it's as simple as that. We've been under almost 2 years of nonstop fear-mongering. Now, a guy like me, it's like, I can get a little bit light with it,
Really funny. Really funny.
and and that works. But there's a lot of people out there that are like this woman in this picture. Okay? They're terrified. And they've been under a state of being terrified for almost 2 years now. The cortisol levels in the body of that woman are like off the charts. And that's what the media is doing. That's what these so-called elected and unelected officials, unelected bureaucrats, these companies, this corporatocracy, big pharma, big tech, big ag, military contractors, big media, right? Wall Streeters, but it's fear-mongering, and they're terrorizing people. There's 8 billion people on the planet right now. They're terrorizing them. We hear stories, or maybe you haven't heard stories. There's horror stories coming out of places like Australia. They're putting people in camps because, it's like, they don't have...
Your papers, please.
I mean, it's like Nazi Germany. It really is. It's ridiculous. This is no way to live. And people are on to it. And 2022 is the year. Forget about the election. See, that doesn't matter. We've had different majorities in Congress. We've had different people in the White House. It didn't make a difference. Right? No. The people terrorizing us right now are Big Pharma. They're the number one, terrorist organization in the U.S. Right? And, it's basically hypocrisy for profit, as I call it. But really, it's kind of like they're terrorizing us for profit. Because as long as they can keep people in this state of constant fear and anxiety, they'll just, march to the drum beat. And who cares that, all this stuff's coming out now about, the timeline of what went on and about various treatments and all this other stuff. That people aren't really paying much attention to that because they're in a state of fear. And the mainstream media, some of these, the ABCs, NBC, CBS, Fox, PBS, MSNBC, Bloomberg, CNBC, Newsmax, the list goes on. I mean, there are so many media outlets now. And look at social media, now it's like Getter and, it's like, but it's still the same thing. People arguing. 6:30 a.m. I've been talking for almost an hour and a half. But anyway, I got a half decent night of sleep last night, so that's a good thing, I hope you enjoy this show.
Go ahead and shoot. You'll be doing me a favor.
If you don't like the show, that's what you can do. Otherwise, I don't know what to say. That's all you are to these people, okay? You're just cattle. And people don't realize that. They don't realize that until the image on the screen right over here, until they're literally, confronted with, the monster, right? So I don't know what to say. I'm just, I'm just a social critic. I just criticize the whole thing. I criticize politicians, both sides. I don't care anymore about that stuff. I live my own life. I'm not monetized. I'm trying to help you out. This is this thing I believe in, service to others instead of service to self. Now, if you want to buy my books and buy some of, the stuff I have, I've branded everything, right? Because I wanted to make this an authentic show. That's why I do this, okay? That's all it is. It's branding. It's because it's kind of been my life, right? I've been in radio, entertainment, advertising, publishing, So if I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to do it the right way, I've got books, I've got, shirts, I've got everything. We got everything you need. We got CDs. We what do you want? We used to have teddy bears. But I don't make any money on it. Very few people buy any of this stuff. I'm not monetized on YouTube. I'm just trying to point out something. I watch these things back myself. I tell you this every day. It's kind of a way where I work out ideas, all right? And so I find these things beneficial for me. And so because I find them beneficial for me, I think they're beneficial for you. And that's why I continue to do it. But if you haven't noticed this like bad vibe that's going around, and I'm telling you, it's that cortisol level that's high that's making us all sick too. All right? You saw that. Okay? That's a factor. And so, there's no wonder there's disease. But remember, despite all of this, humans are so resilient, right? That 99+% of Americans did not die from this thing. That's an actual statistic, an actual fact. You'll say, but I saw 800,000 people. Well, it's a question of with or from. They asked the CDC director that, and she said, well, I'll have to get back to you on that. Right? She blew it off. But the point is, even if it was 1 million, and I've said this so many times, but it's worth repeating. Even if 1 million people died from this thing, in a country of 330 million people, that's less than 1/3 of 1%, meaning that 99.6% of the people in this country did not die from this thing and won't die from this thing. Because if we're only at 700,000 or 800,000, that means there's still a couple 100,000 to go before you even hit 1/3 of 1%. So it's fair to say that 99.6% of the people in this country did not or will not die from this thing. Think about it. Imagine that. Imagine if somebody said, and you go, I'm afraid to go outside. And the person says, oh, man, look, there's a 99.6% chance that nothing's going to happen. You mean, if someone, forget the 0.6, even if someone just said, it's like 1 in 100, 99%. Like I watch these doctors, who are talking about like the reason I don't want to have a gallbladder operation. Because they said, well, 1 in 100, 1% of the people might have, I don't want to gross you out, but diarrhea for the rest of their life or complications or bleeding or something else. I'm 1 in 100. Right? So the point of the matter is, I don't want to be the 1 in 100, but a 99% possibility, they're presenting it in that way by saying, yeah, but 99% of the people are okay. So it's a matter of, it's beyond glass half empty, glass full. That would be if they said it was 55% of the people died or lived and, 45% of the people died. I realized my last example wasn't a really good argument. Wasn't exactly placed the right way. But the point is, what I'm trying to say. If I say there's a 99%, I'm pretty sure that 99% of the people going down that ski slope aren't going to hit a tree or something. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good odds. If I say 80%, you might say, well, I don't know. That's still, you might, depending on your, okay. But 99.6% of the people didn't die. But they still got high cortisol levels. So the people who did die probably. Here's what the CDC, she said the other day, and it was on, believe it or not, I think it was on CNN. Okay? She said that 3 out of 4 deaths were people who had, it was something like that. Again, I'm paraphrasing, and this isn't the exact quote. Please seek this out, okay? I don't want to put words in someone's mouth. But it was something along the line that something like 3 out of 4 people who died, and that number I'm not 100% sure of, but it was like that kind of thing. 4 out of 5, 3 out of 4. All right. Had at least 4 comorbidities. All right. 4 comorbidities, meaning things like, they were deathly ill. So that's that whole question of with and from, and that's starting to come out in the mainstream media now. So I think this thing is where I hope this is winding down, because I think people understand that there's this general sense of like, no faith in the future anymore, and that these high cortisol levels can't be maintained. It's just not healthy for an entire nation to be constantly under this state of fear and anxiety and have no belief or faith in the future. And so the politicians are seeing that, because that's, because they're all going to get voted out of office. But the hypocrisy of that whole thing is that even if there's this so-called red wave, well, the politicians don't control what's going on. Big Pharma is in charge. Right? This is hundreds of billion-dollar industry. Right? They're not giving the treatments. There's pills you could buy for, $50. They're giving people. But that can't be spoken, right? So, I see this has got to come to a head, and it's got to happen soon. But they do seem to be doubling down. I don't get it. So, people talk, civil war and this, that, the other. You know what? People are starting to realize they're looking around their neighborhoods, they're looking around at their friends, and they're seeing that they have friends who are black. They see they have friends who are different religions, friends that, this, that, the other. And they're going, you know what? I don't know what this divisiveness they're talking about on TV is, because I don't see it. Right? I mean, I sure as hell don't see it here. I live in a neighborhood, totally integrated neighborhood. I'll go to the grocery store. I've said this before. I don't see any of that stuff here. All right? And I'm even in a place where probably people in the so-called major markets, because I've lived in all the major markets, basically. And in the ones I haven't lived and worked in, I've visited. But people in those areas would probably consider this area, to be like a lot of yahoos or something, whatever, rednecks and stuff like that. And the fact of the matter is, these areas are probably more integrated than some of the cities themselves. Because in the cities you have, like I lived in New York, you have these gentrified neighborhoods where they kick out all the people of color, or they kick out all, the poor, and it's taken over by the Chelsea Clintons, who have these $1 million apartments overlooking, Central Park and stuff. That's what I'm trying to say. That's this whole hypocrisy for profit idea. In the real world, down here, right, down on Earth, we're all getting along. We've been pretty much getting along for a long time. And these manufactured stories, it's like that whole January 6th nonsense thing that they, some of us, we look at that and go like, what are you even talking about? If you want to see something, check out a Mark Levine video from a couple of days ago, where he showed an old black and white video of when these when the Capitol was really attacked. Like there's a news coverage of that from like in the 1960s or something like that, like a real insurrection type of thing. I couldn't believe it. I mean, there's some people out there that really dig deep and find this stuff. And you'd be surprised how much footage exists, since the television era, dating back to like the late 50s into the 60s. They call it kinescope. And what people used to do is they would set up cameras, film cameras, in front of the television feed, and then they would put that on film, and then they would put those films in vaults, and that's why you could see I Love Lucy shows from the old days, or black and white bonanzas or something, right? Because those shows weren't made on videotape, necessarily. And some of those shows, are like the Jackie Gleason show and stuff like that. A lot of those shows, or some of the more live variety shows and things like that, they were preserved on film, and then in effect, that's how, then converted later on digitally remastered and stuff like that. Or if they were taped, that tape was then converted and digitized, remastered. It's like you can buy records now that have been remastered and stuff like that. But anyway, I think that's it. I'm going to go to the store. I want to get out there, even though the temperature, let me check it for myself. It's frickin' 10 degrees outside, and it's not even going to get up to 14 till 10 o'clock. So it's like, if it's 6:43 a.m. right now, at 9 o'clock, it's still going to be 10 degrees, probably with the wind chill below 0 Fahrenheit. It's crazy. Anyway, good morning. Thanks for tuning in. I think it's interesting. If you just tuned in, rewind or check the playback. There was some interesting stuff we got to talk about. Check out my book, Codex, which was the one before Then What, which is my latest book is Then What. Great solar stuff, has stuff that'll help you if you get caught in with the power out. And, of course, you can see our lovely girl here with the Game Over shirt on. All of my sayings, like you don't know what you don't know and everything you know is wrong, as well as Game Over. And you could even get branded shirts with ROCKFLUX and the classic Tony Caravan face, which I need to add to this. I'm going to add to this after this webcast. Check out TonyCaravanLive.com or ROCKFLUX.com and, and get something. And if I ever get kicked off of this platform, go to those websites, because I have my own server, and that'll tell you where I am. I have accounts all over the place. Take care. Have a great day.